Hello, how's everybody doing? Hope you are doing well. My name is Andrew Kuhn, Focus Compounding, sitting in our hotel room in Ohio, sitting next to Geoff Gannon. Jeff, how's it going today?
It's going very well, Andrew. How's it going with you?
It's going great. Hope it's going great for everybody else. Hope everyone is having a great week. If this is the first time that you are tuning into the Focus Compound podcast, which happens to be the #1 value investing podcast in the world, make sure you hit the subscribe button both on YouTube and the podcast side of things. If you're not following me on Twitter, what are you doing? Follow me at Focused Compound. I haven't been too active since we've been on the trip. Huh?
Oh, I don't know what that's all about. Okay.
Yeah, I know. We were talking yesterday, and I was like, we've been very busy on this trip.
Okay.
Yesterday, today's Sunday when we're recording, and I slept in until about 11:30 a.m. today.
Okay.
And I was like, I feel like this is my first time all week sleeping because we left, on Monday and it's Sunday. And it's hard for me to sleep in or even sleep in general when I know I have something to do the next day. And this was our first day pretty much all week that we just haven't had anything to do. Right. Or on a time schedule. We did go do stuff that we want to do in this area. But after I woke up, so I finally got a good night's sleep. And we're just going to spend this podcast talking about, I guess, our experience with this trip. We have another week. We started in Nashville, and we went from Nashville to West Virginia. West Virginia to
we did West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, back and forth across the border.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've been all over the place.
Yeah,
we've been everywhere. We've been nowhere. We're like a ghost.
Yeah.
And
then and we'll be and the rest of our trip will be going from there down south. And then,
we went to Pennsylvania. We were in Pittsburgh.
We're in Pittsburgh.
And then we came to Ohio, and then we're going to go to a few other areas.
Basically down towards Washington, D.C., then down towards Atlanta, and then over back to Dallas, where we started.
Exactly, which will be next Sunday, I'm sure, is when we'll arrive back in Dallas. And
there were things we planned to do, and we did not because some things changed with COVID and stuff. So we never went into the New Jersey, New York states, Connecticut, those states.
And that's what I was going to say. So we always talk about why we like to drive on these, research trips, scuttlebutt trips, because we're on our own schedule. And if we have to diverge and shift course a little bit, it's not the end of the world.
And we always do have to diverge.
That is true. We were going to go to New Jersey.
Yes.
Which is Jeff's home place. And we got a text from Mrs. Gannon. Mrs. Gannon. I got a text from Mrs. Gannon informing us.
That's my mom, not my wife.
That's right. Informing us the new, COVID precautions going on in New Jersey, pretty much suggesting don't come to New Jersey. So we said, okay, fine, we'll go to Ohio. So we're in Ohio now, and it's great because we're like, well, there's some companies that we could visit over here. It was a little bit out of the way, but now we could do it. So I think that adds to, just being able to be flexible. And if you drive yourself, you're able to be on your own schedule. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And we have plenty of people cancel on us. And we also have plenty of people say, oh yeah, I can do it now. So that's an advantage for both of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in Nashville. We drove around the city, spent a lot of time there. Was looking at a few different companies there. We were able to meet with investors. That's probably one of the best things about, going on these trips is really telling people where you're going to be. And then if they reach out and they would like to just talk about stocks, even if it's not, I think the people we meet up with are probably excited to meet with, us because of the podcast or they followed you for a very long time. But it's just as exciting for us to, talk to them about what they're doing and try to learn about, whatever they're investing in and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So in Nashville, we met with management in one case. We saw a site without being able to meet with management in one case. And then we also spoke to an investor, by which you mean someone who invests in stocks and things and stuff. So we have some different ones that way where sometimes we have meetings with people who might invest in our fund or whatever, or who are investors or whatever. That's fine. That's nice. We don't have a lot of that on this trip. And then sometimes we meet with people who are portfolio managers of some kind or whatever like that, who are more stock pickers, and then we can talk stocks with them. And that's always my favorite thing to do. Generally. Yeah.
So we did that. We met with management. We saw a site.
We also, and in that case, we talked to someone who's an author of a book that I think I mentioned in a previous podcast, if we're doing these podcasts in the right order.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that book. So yeah, that's capital allocation, financial history of a New England textile mill, 1955 to 1985.
Yeah, and he's
So it's a
probably
history
the
of
author's
Berkshire.
going to come on the podcast. We're going to probably make a series out of it.
Yeah, but we did see him in Nashville, and I actually read the book a couple times now. By the time you're hearing this, I've read it a few times because I don't have that many books around with me on this trip. So
yeah, so we did that in Nashville, then we left Nashville, and we ended up in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah,
but we went to
spent
West
quite
Virginia
a lot of time
first.
in West Virginia.
Yeah, I
actually.
wish we actually stayed in West Virginia because we weren't in Pittsburgh for a very long time.
No, so yeah, because some things got canceled and stuff with Pittsburgh. We could have stayed in West Virginia a much longer time.
Mm-hmm. And West Virginia was first time there for both you and myself.
Technically, I've been to West Virginia before, but yeah.
First time staying there then overnight, right?
No, I stayed there.
Oh, okay.
Just not that part of West Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
I'm from New Jersey, so West Virginia's not very far
Yeah.
away from that side. But yeah,
Well, it was beautiful, and we didn't end up. We were supposed to meet with a manager, and that's a. I gotta be careful what I say. It's not it is what it is, right? I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of people because of COVID and everything. They may be more reluctant not to meet.
right. Not in West Virginia generally.
Yeah, I didn't see one mask
few,
in West Virginia.
very
not
very
one.
few COVID cases in West Virginia. I think it may have been the last state to get a COVID case and all that. So very little of that. Whereas in Pittsburgh there was a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that was some reasons for why people don't meet in Pittsburgh and stuff. Whereas in West Virginia, it was interesting to be there. It could have been a good home base, except for the fact that which is why there aren't as many businesses there and stuff, is too far from major metropolitan areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it actually, of the places we stayed and stuff, it was the nicest and for the money and stuff place that we stayed by far.
Yeah, it was a good time. I didn't even want to leave, but we left there.
Yeah,
and
we had to leave there to go.
We kind of drove over a few different states, and we ended up in Pittsburgh, and we actually were able to meet up with Dave Waters, which was a lot of fun. He met
Alluvial,
for,
and OTC Adventures.
Yeah, OTC Adventures. We met for coffee. We got Colombian coffee, the three of us, and we sat down and chatted for a little bit about stocks. And we were definitely very appreciative of Dave taking out some of his time on a Saturday
over by
to meet with us.
the Pirates stadium there.
Yep.
Yeah, their
so
field.
we weren't even there for, maybe 24 hours. No, not even 24 hours, right? We had plans to meet with management there as well, and then that fell through. So, we did what we did, and we met with Dave, drove around the neighborhood of where the headquarters is, just to kind of get a feel for that. And maybe that's a good example, right, of what we were doing, because it did turn out to be productive, because we also, we were able to take something away from it.
Yeah,
right?
so maybe we could talk specifically about that and what we're looking at and stuff. So as a weird example, for instance, I did still want to see something in Pittsburgh as an example. We could go over each of these things and stuff, but we'll use Pittsburgh as an example. We weren't going to meet with management there at the time. We knew that. And it wasn't a site to see interacting with the public, but you could still see where their headquarters was. And I had a concern for whatever the kind of business it was in Pittsburgh and stuff, that the businesses it competes with are generally located in much more desirable cities for young people coming out of college to live in.
Silicon Valley, think stuff like that. Technology.
I was saying, San Francisco, Austin, Brooklyn, New York, places like that are where some of their competitors are. And much more expensive cities than Pittsburgh, but also perhaps more attractive to young people coming out of some colleges. Now, they have some colleges around Pittsburgh and stuff, and they could attract people from the local area, but it would depend on, I really wondered if they would take a job there versus taking a job in other places.
Sure.
Yeah. And then we saw where it was and everything, and so we get a better feel for whether that's true and whether that concern is a real concern and stuff like that. And you also get get an idea for where Pittsburgh is versus other things. That way, how far away it is from everything, stuff like that. And you could figure some of those things before, but sometimes we found things in our trip where I would say it confirmed what my thoughts were.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was very different than what I thought. With Pittsburgh and stuff, it confirmed my thoughts about the both attractiveness of the location and why it would be a good place for the company to have it, but also the difficulties of recruitment for some things, for certain kinds of people and stuff. I think both of those it reinforced for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So we left Pittsburgh, and then we ended up in Ohio, where we currently are now. We're going to be here until Tuesday, and then we're going to leave and continue on with our trip. I did tell Geoff I really do like Ohio, and I grew up in a town, Hampshire, Illinois, 6,000 people, suburbs outside of Chicago, probably about, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour.
Now people can look
Chicago.
up everything about your history.
Yeah.
They got your full name. They've got where you were born. And
should I give them my
yeah.
social security number too?
You've pretty much given them almost that.
I know. And 6,000 people. I grew up in a farm town. Okay.
Yeah.
And I never realized how much I enjoy the terrain of like trees and greenery and everything. Because even in Dallas, you look and it's just homes everywhere. There's like nothing there. You were saying that when you moved from New Jersey, that was something that was kind of different for you as well, right? You missed like the big trees and stuff like that, and just like more like established terrain.
Yeah, it was odd being in parts of West Virginia and being like, oh, this looks a lot like New Jersey in terms of the look of the place.
Yeah.
And Ohio and places like that. Now the towns and stuff totally different, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're in Ohio and we are here for a few days, and we were able to be productive. And one thing that I did say on, I think the video that we did was we are always able to maybe let's say we always look around us to see if there's a competitor of a business that we own,
right? Where
you could go. So like, let's say we own a movie theater, for example, and we, go and stay somewhere in Ohio. We'll look in the general area to see if there's another movie theater that's a competitor to our company, just to really get ideas, kind of like know the business through and through, and take stuff away from it.
I was gonna say, how many did we go to this time in that category? 3
This hypothetical theaters, probably theaters. Like 3 or 4. Yeah.
3 or 4, yeah. So we do that, visit those sites that way. So that's something where you can see because you can see it like a customer would.
Yeah.
That way. Yeah. And then in other cases we can see things because of the importance of the town and stuff. So for some kinds of businesses it matters a great deal. For some we look at the land they own and stuff, but in other ones it's like it serves the community in some way. So I've talked about those before. That could be things that it could be local, like in the sense of movies and restaurants and clubs and whatever things. It can also be things like banks and stuff like that. Because those depend so much on the local area, and unless you know a bit about seeing the area, you don't have a real feel for that. And we talked a little bit about that in our Nashville one, where we talked about like how Nashville is booming and stuff, and those sorts of things. And likewise, we were in parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania where that was not the case, and it was clear that some of the properties owned there had probably the population density may have decreased a bit, and certainly the income levels had decreased over time, and the ages had gone up of the people around some areas versus what it would have been 50 years ago, let's say.
Yeah, we've seen a couple towns like that. It's kind of sad to see where maybe steel was important to the town or coal was important to the town.
Yeah, several of those were steel and coal. Oh, and a little bit was fracking.
Yeah, or fracking, recent, maybe 30 to 40 years ago. And I'm sure 30 to 40 years ago, maybe the town was, I'd say booming, but, doing okay. And everyone worked at the mill or did whatever. And when that has gone away, it's like we've seen 2 or 3 different, probably even more. And it's much more run down, I guess you could say. So it's sad to see,
Yeah, and we went to one other place, which is the opposite, where I thought it would be... the land would be much less valuable and things like that, because from satellite images and from maps and things like that, I knew it was in the middle of nowhere, but it was sort of a hub for lots of other people coming around to it, and more recent and stuff. So actually it was interesting to see that it was much more of a centralized population center than I ever expected. However, very rural, micropolitan, right? So a tiny city that serves a very rural outlying area, but everyone has to come there to go to the Walmarts and the Home Depots and the things. And so that was different than what I expected, because that was not obvious actually from looking at maps and things. It just was obvious that it was in a very, very rural place. And the counties it's in is very rural, but the city itself sort of isn't.
What have been some big takeaways for you on this trip? Have you considered it productive?
Have I considered it productive? Yes, I've considered it very productive because for different reasons. But like we were able to talk to management, or I shouldn't say management. We were able to talk to several people lower down in the organization, so executives who are not actually the CEO or the chairman, and those often are the best.
Yeah.
So the heads of different business units, basically, and sort of second in charge of different business units and stuff like that. And that was very, very useful, and I always find that useful. So that's yes. Anything that is dependent entirely on a town or something, seeing that is very useful. Yeah. And a couple ones mixed bag with land things. We saw 3 different things with land, and it was a very mixed bag in terms of what I found versus what I expected.
Do you think you could have found this stuff from a Google search?
I think I think in one case my opinion moved up materially, in one case it moved down materially.
So that's good.
And in one case, it was within the range of kind of what I expected. Yeah.
But that's good, though.
Yeah, although in the case, it is good. And in the case of one that I kind of was the same as what I expected, I see the potential that 10 years from now, it may be a lot more valuable. I didn't realize how much the city was encroaching on that area. From Google searches and stuff, that wasn't obvious. Yeah. And so that could really change. I don't know if it will for the company and stuff, but I have no doubt it'll be a lot more valuable, that land, in 10 years. Yeah.
So the town being very important, that's a big takeaway from you.
It's very important. Well, it's very, very important if you're looking at things that are land. You got to do that. I mean, I don't know how you can invest in something that's land without like seeing it and stuff. I mean, I've done it because I can't get to it in some cases.
Land involved. We're not talking like just a full-on land play.
Correct. Yeah.
No, I'm saying like this example of what we're doing, but yes, anytime there's land involved.
Yeah. But and then other things. I mean, unfortunately, we had one where we couldn't see it, a bank thing that we couldn't see, and we would have seen that area. But in other cases, you can see things. I would say definitely that's true for anything that's a very local business that serves the public there. So definitely, I always think that's true with banks, that you have to see the area that they're in. Yeah. Definitely.
And then also being able to separate out the two of what time we're in, right? So when we were in New Jersey, and we're not even thinking about investing in Village supermarkets, but we want to see it because we talk about it a lot. You have invested in it, and I, keep up with the thread.
Right. We would
Berkshire. So, and you did tell me, you're like, I do have to caution you though, that what you're going to see probably isn't like a normal thing. I mean, their earnings came out and they were up how much percent? I mean, they've obviously been incredibly busy, right? So it's being able to separate out the two of what's going on right now from like a macro level or whatever.
Right. When we were going to be in the New Jersey area, we would have been able to see some ARC restaurants locations, not just in New Jersey, but all around there, from New York down to DC. And we would have seen supermarkets there. And it would have been good. It would have been great to see those things. And those are very important things to see in person. So those are some pretty big supermarkets. And there's some really, really big restaurants. And so they're key to actually see them in person. It's not like a chain that's repeating the same thing in every location. It's not like if you've seen one Chipotle, you've seen most of them. But it's something where there's very big locations, and locations are important. Unfortunately, we couldn't see those at all because of COVID. But even if we had, obviously restaurants, casinos not operating normally, and supermarkets not operating normally in that area because they're an essential business and all the non-essential businesses are shut down. So they're actually have way more volume than is normal. Yeah.
I think the question on everybody's mind is, how annoying am I to travel with?
I'm glad this isn't a video podcast, so you can't see my face reaction. No, I think we do.
Come on, we travel great together.
I think we do. I think we do okay.
You're a good co-pilot.
I think we know how to deal with each other in a way that doesn't bother the other person, or however you want to put it, right?
I would definitely agree with that.
You'd say that you're aware of that? Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of things where we argue about something or whatever.
No, that is definitely true. So from here, so it's Sunday. We got a whole nother week on the road, a bunch of stuff planned, which, we're hoping is going to, happen. If not, then we'll just do what we do and pick up and go on to the next thing. So when we did take the shift, right, I thought it was interesting because we're like, well, we could go here. And then you were thinking of, all the companies that are in the area.
Right.
Right. And lo and behold, this idea that we've been, I guess, studying maybe the past couple days or whatever, it's a very interesting idea. And this is some stuff that we're like, wow, if we never even took this detour, we never would have even been talking about it right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, there was something, and I said, look, we're going to be in the area, and I don't think this is something I'd invest in, but I can tell you it's one of the cheapest things I've ever seen. So I kind of feel like we should see it, you know? And sometimes I'll say that, like, probably we want to invest in this, but there's something about it that you just have to see it. And, I mean, there was something else in our trip that was kind of like that, where we had planned it out to go there, but same thing, where I was like, this looks astoundingly cheap by the numbers that I do on it. So I just have to make sure that it's not like, that there's not really weird reasons why it is. Like, I have to see the area and make sure that it's really there and there's people around it and stuff. But, and in some cases you see things that are very, much more impressive than you expected. But of course that has a mixed thing. And this is the important part of it. Like, we know what the earnings were and stuff. So when you go and see some of these things, like if you see facilities that you're amazed at the what they put into it and the quality of it versus just generally in the country and certainly in the area and stuff, that it's far beyond what other competitors would be able to offer in terms of facilities and stuff. Well, if we know that and they are having trouble doing any better than breaking even, it does make you think, ooh, should you have ever put that thing there? You know what I mean? It's like if you went to a theme park and you were like, this is an amazing theme park, and I know from the numbers that it's barely making any money, maybe it's not in the right location. You know what I mean? And that can happen sometimes. Whereas the reverse can happen sometimes, and you can see something and I'm actually impressed because I know it's making a lot of money, and I'm like, they haven't done that much to really do everything they could do here. That's pretty impressive, So I think a lot of times people are just like, I don't know. When I talk to people, it's like, did you go there? Did you see it? Did it look nice? Did it have a fresh coat of paint on it and stuff like that? You know what I mean?
Could they do X amount of business out of that? Yeah.
Yeah. And like you met with people, did they seem honest and decent and whatever kind of with it people? And, it's actually a mix. It's like getting more of a feeling for what they're like and getting a feeling for what the places are like. And often it's more getting an idea of what kind of place it is and what makes it unique, both the positives and the negatives. Because anytime we come out of anything, I'll say like, some things I liked about it, but also, some things that aren't their strengths and stuff, which is fine. That's not maybe what their customers are looking for, and that's not their thing that they're doing, Yeah. So I think visiting is very, very important in the case of things like that. It would have been great if we could have visited in New Jersey and stuff, because retail and restaurants and stuff are great things to visit in person. Now, for a lot of people investing, they can invest in chains that are national. Now, you have a kind of disadvantage in that you can't get information about those other people don't have. But I know why people do it, because they don't want to invest in a chain that's in a part of the country that they're not in. Because I was talking to someone in another country and stuff, and they were talking about a chain which is in like not much outside one U.S. state, and they're kind of like, I can read the financials, I could guess about this stuff, but I don't actually know anything about this market. I don't know this chain, anything like that. So it can be an advantage that way. And it is great to see retail and restaurant things that are not all over the country. And that's unfortunately, we weren't able to see that. The same thing would be true with casinos and things like that. Movie theaters, for the most part, are down to the point where the big public companies are all over the nation. There's not many that aren't. But you, even when you're in Illinois, looked at some restaurant things I had you look at, because I can't see them. And even on a trip, they aren't in that area. So how did that go?
No, it was great. It was good because...
How many did you see? How many locations?
What I see, 4 or 5. And then I talked to like 20 different franchisees. I was just cold calling them.
Right.
I pretty much told them exactly what I was doing and if they would, be willing to chat. And that's the most surprising thing to me, is how willing most people are to chat. If you're like, I'm not going to publish this anywhere, I'm not going to use anyone's name, like nothing like that. But, are you willing to talk to me about your business?
Right.
And a lot of people are willing. And, for me, I was telling Geoff, somebody asked on the podcast how much of an influence you've had on me as an investor, right? Okay. And I kind of started my answer. I said, well, I've been able to take this theory and I guess apply it to like the real world. Okay. And you actually answered my question better than I answered my question, right, which is great. Okay. Like a great partner should, right? You said that you think going on scuttlebutt trips has been immensely helpful for me. And I was like, yeah, actually that is true. And just doing my own scuttlebutt has like been incredibly helpful as well, because, you learn so much where you take the filings, right? You take this theory or whatever, even though the filings isn't theory, but stay with me. But you actually go and you add a level of practicalness to it, because you're talking to the people that are actually running the business itself. You could hear about the way that they think about management. Like we could talk about the company. It was Big Apple Bagel, right? You wrote about it on Focus Compounding. I wrote about Focus
Compounding. Unlikely we'd invest in it.
Yeah, unlikely that we'd invest in it. It's a very the reason it piqued our interest is because it's the smallest, most legitimate business that produces free cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, it's
up there.
It's it's probably the smallest that I'm aware of that consistently generates free cash flow. I mean, what's the market cap on? $3 million or something incredibly low like that. There's no companies that small that generate free cash flow every year, so that's why we looked at it.
Yeah, and from looking, it's think of like a morning bagel shop and coffee, and it was even little things too. Like I ate at every single one. I tried like different food at different places, and some people be like, what's the point of doing that? But I just I like to eat, right? And I wanted to do that. And I tried the coffee and I was like, it was absolutely terrible.
And they own the coffee brand, so that's an important thing to know.
But it was, and I'm not
terrible. And Einstein has Caribou, which is good coffee. So.
I did get made fun of though for drinking a Starbucks in Nashville, so maybe I don't have good coffee taste. But someone on Twitter,
Nashville looks like a town that would have a lot of coffee shops.
Last
time we were there, we were in some places that there's some streets that definitely felt that way.
But so the coffee was terrible. But just really talking to the people, seeing the way that they run these stores, and really getting their thoughts on it, right? And it's always interesting to me, right, how you could read these pamphlets online or just like QS. This was obviously a QSR, right? So you could go to QSR, like magazine or whatever the online publication is, and get like the average revenue per place. But it's like every person I talked to, it was not in that range. So it's like when they give like, the top end of the range does 1.35 million, be like, wow, is that really just one person or two people? Because everyone I talked to is like 300 or it pays my bills, or I can tell that they're not making a ton of money on this, right? And then it's just also like feeling out a lot of QSRs as an owner, you may not make start to make serious amount of money or whatever you want to call that, so you open 2 or 3 or 4 different stores. Are they manager stores? Are we like, do they have a manager in the store? Are they owner operated stores? But you learn a lot about the industry too, right? And guys tell me, if you could make a lot of money with a wholesale business, that's incredibly profitable business because you don't have to throw away anything, right? So you price it all out at once. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But, their views and the way that they feel about the owners and the franchise, and if they were to start their own, or if they were to start over, would they just start their own? Would they start Geoff Gannon's Bagels, or would they go with Big Apple Bagel?
Right.
And we had suspicions of, competition, Panera Bread and everything. And I was talking to a lot of these people. They're like, yeah, when I started, with this company 15 years ago, there wasn't so much competition like there is now. If I were to redo it, I would probably just do it myself.
Right. Whereas at the time, they didn't have that kind of thing and stuff. Yeah. And they talk about how that is in that area.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing because look, I don't know how many people, there are some people in that part of the country who've seen them and stuff, but a bunch of people who are investors don't know it's a public company, Big Apple Bagel. And then those who do know it's a public company and stuff haven't been to a lot of them. So it's a thing that you can do that is a big advantage.
But like here from the numbers, it looks interesting.
Yeah.
It's very cheap, right? It's interesting. It's a very small company. Their free cash flow yield is pretty high. Like they generate good free cash flow and the quality of that. But, I don't know. We did our own scuttlebutt and we're just like, yeah, probably not. I mean, we're probably not going to invest in it, So it's just interesting how you could form an opinion in some questions. And a lot of times Geoff will do like the early research and you have questions and stuff like that. And then it's kind of my job to help figure them out or whatever.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's sort of like a guess or something. Like even with Big Apple Bagel, my sort of feeling was that the franchisees that were left had probably been there for a long time and probably weren't making enough money to actually be putting tons of money back into it. So on the one hand, these are successful people, like they've been doing it for a while. On the other hand, these might be a little outdated and stuff versus competition coming in new from bigger chains and things. And that kind of turned out to be true when you saw them.
Yeah, that was definitely true. Yeah. From talking to people, if you get into the business, it's either you inherit it or you buy somebody else's already existing business. You don't really go as a startup.
Yeah.
So they're not opening up new stores like with just some guy that's like, hey, I want to open up a Big Apple Bagel.
Right.
Maybe you buy 1 or 2 different stores. But again, I mean, that's just good information to know just from talking to the franchisees, right? And about their experience and going and seeing it in person and everything like that.
Yeah. And you can always get a feel for areas, like whenever we go anywhere in the country with any business you're looking at, you can always ask them about that area and about the employers and about things like that and gather a lot of information that way. Everyone's happy to do that.
I swear by it. The more we go on trips, the more I'm like, we're going to be gone once a week, once a month for a week.
For a week, yeah.
I mean, don't you agree? It's
yes. And you definitely love the trips also because the 2 that we've done so far, one we did early on after we were done with the marketing part of it and stuff. So it was a lot of fun to go out and do the actual investing. Yeah. Then COVID happened basically. So we did not do one week a month. It's been a very long, very long wait till then. So yeah, I think it'll be good. Yeah.
And it's because investors won't do it too. So like that's why I was asking you.
I mean,
could you figure that out from a Google search? So, a lot of stuff that we've
obviously
seen.
Individual investors generally have the problem that they can't go out and do it on company time.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now some, I don't know. I mean, I knew someone who wrote something up and we visited.
Working from home right now.
And we visited something that someone wrote up and it was, by my math, 15 minutes away from him and he'd never been. Yeah. So you could probably do that. But some other ones, not the case.
I was just like, we should be on the road all the time because what would we be doing if not? I mean, we're podcasting from our hotel room right now, right?
Yes.
We can. Other than that, we'd just be sitting and reading and doing the same.
Yeah, I get up and just write at the computer and stuff. So yeah, it's not all that different. No,
we should be like
do it all from the road. Peter Lynch did it all from the road, basically. So
well, that's why
if that's the life that you want to retire in 11 years or 13 years, how long did you make it?
Yeah. Well, they asked him, so he was on the road 6 days a week, right? But not even just, I mean, if you read his books, when he like got in the car at 6 or 7 a.m., he was reading in the back seat, right? So like he was dialed in.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a recent interview that I tweeted out when he was on Charlie Rose, and he was talking. Charlie Rose is like, "Wow, I mean, 13 years or 11 years, or whatever. Like you're done." And Peter Lynch is like, "I'm done." He's like, "I am wiped out. I'm done." And I was like, "Wow, this guy really is burnt out from it." And I can see that. I mean, it is exhausting. When you're constantly. I was saying even just driving for long distances, and if you plan it out the right way or the way you should. Maybe you're only driving 4 to 5 hours at a time, right? But there was one when we drove to Nashville. It was like, I don't know, what was it, 9, 10, 11 hours?
Yeah,
Something like that.
I mean, 10. It was 10 and a half hours driving. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, that's a long time to be focusing on the road. Yeah, you do get tired, but I mean, it's so. From my experience, it's just so productive. You learn so much, and there's been a lot of situations where if we just read the thread on, the internet or listened to other investors, we probably wouldn't be as interested in the stock.
I agree with that. A lot of people are going to hate this podcast, because they're going to say, well, thanks, I can't do that. That's what they say with the Phil Fisher one, the scuttlebutt. They're like, oh, it's a great book, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it. So find out what you can do in your local area and stuff. You can do it. You can certainly
but me
do
cold calling franchisees and just like saying, hey, can you talk?
By the way, we found a handful of businesses in Fort Worth and Dallas and stuff. I mean, Fort Worth isn't that far from Dallas and stuff. So it would be, I mean, I could easily come up with a dozen businesses that we could visit in person within an hour or so of Dallas. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a little extreme, but still, when I lived in New Jersey, that would have been true too. So it's not true for some people to listen to this, but if you are where we are now, there's fewer businesses, but
definitely. Cool. Well, we will report back. We've got one more week. Hopefully it's going to be productive. Schedule says we're going to be productive.
No tornadoes or anything like that.
Yes, no tornadoes. And the funniest thing about that story that we told, by the way, for those that don't remember, Geoff and I, there was a good 30 seconds where I thought we were going to die. I literally was like, this is it. So we're driving.
Apparently I did too, because you said you looked over at me, and that's
Geoff never gets nervous, scared, nothing. There was a good 10 to 15 seconds where he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh yeah. He's thinking like the same thing I'm thinking, like, oh shit, right? And so we're in Texas, and we're listening to the snowball. All is well.
Right.
We're just whatever. We probably have another 3 to 4 hours back to Dallas. And all of a sudden, it starts raining really hard, so much to the point where I even turned down the volume. I was at 10 and 2 on the wheel. I'm like, I need to focus, right? So I turned on the volume, and probably about 10 seconds after that, both of our cell phones, Geoff doesn't have a cell phone anymore, but both of our cell phones,
back then,
they started, it was, the alert was going off, emergency. It said, take cover, tornado. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? And it was at this point for a good 10 to 15 seconds. I was like, okay, do we pull over? Do I go under this bridge? Like, what do we do? Right. So luckily there was an exit. We get off at the exit and there's sirens going off like crazy. We pull into a Walmart. Thank God there was a Walmart that just happened to be right off the highway.
Yeah.
And we get out of the car, and there's a lady at a Walmart worker that was like waving to us, like, get inside. So we run inside, we're escorted to the back. Long story short, business as usual. We hang out in the back, and everything was okay. But what was crazy was when we did get back on the road, we let the storm get a little bit more forward or whatever before we left. We probably were in Walmart for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
We texted some people, warned us to let it go because it was destroying other places.
It was like tearing up trees. Like, it was a full-blown tornado. Like, you and I would have been, boom, we would have been gone, Yeah. But that was just a weird day in general because we were staying in a hotel. And this is the part that, like, we didn't talk about on the podcast. Like, that day was just weird.
Every trip, so we've done 2 trips now. We've hit at least one place each time that you weren't happy through the night at.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe that's one reason why people don't do these trips.
Well, when we were in Pittsburgh, I asked Geoff.
We don't like stay at the Ritz when we do these.
Yeah, we're not staying at like motels or anything, but
no, but we're all staying sometimes in random places in West Virginia and Ohio and Georgia and wherever. Yeah.
When we were in Pittsburgh, I asked Geoff the next morning. I'm like, "Did you hear what's going on last night?" And he's like, "No, not well." But I was just sitting up in the bed. Literally, it was like 2:33. There was like a war going outside of our room. Yeah, literally a war. And I was like, "What is going on right now?" I'm kind of like, Geoff's like, where you were sleeping was kind of by the door. Like, that's where your bed was. Yeah. I'm like, what is going on right now?
Last time we had an issue with that. And I've never told you this, but I was considering going, because I thought funny.
Oh, yeah?
To go and knock on their door.
Oh, God.
Because that'd be funny to see your reaction. But I was worried that you'd be like, I have to go with him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can't let him go alone, and stuff to tell them to do it.
So tell the backstory. This is funny. We haven't talked about this on the podcast.
Well, no, so we were staying in a hotel room, and in the room next door, there was some stuff going on between these 2 guys. I don't know exactly what was going on.
There was like 3 or 4.
Okay, maybe it was 3 or 4. But they were having quite a thing, and they were like, I'm leaving, and this and that. They were like throwing furniture around and everything, and whatever, who knows. And so, I mean, eventually we decided it was very, very early in the morning. Yeah. And we decided we're just going to
Yeah, there was just
we're gonna leave
craziness,
and like
World
just
War
make good
III,
time because we're gonna leave at like 5 a.m. or whatever we decided to do.
But that's not that night was not just that. Do you remember what happened a few hours earlier?
Oh, with the fire alarm?
Yes.
Yeah. So fire alarm went off, and Andrew was sleeping, and he had headphones on his head, and I figured he went off around midnight or 1 a.m. around that time, and I figured that it was that you were just like I actually figured at first that you were just like you were just going to ignore it or something and think it would stop in a second, and then I realized that's not what was happening. And so then I thought maybe you'd had more of the cider that we had sampled for research purposes.
Yeah.
I bought some cider from a company that we know. Yeah, so I bought 2 of their ciders and tested them out. Yeah. But I seem to remember that I had more of them than you had, so I didn't think that was the problem. Yeah. And so I was shaking you to wake you up and stuff because
you said for like a good couple minutes, right?
Yeah,
I just would not wake up.
No, it was really weird.
So I just picture you be like looking at like the bottle or like the cases of cider, and be like, what the hell? Like, did he just drink a lot? Like, is he drunk? You said that you thought I was like just like drunk. Yeah, I had like a couple sips because I'm like, I'm just gonna go bed, you know?
Yeah, it's the only theory that I could have. Yeah. So so we had to get up and get out of there.
Yeah, so that happened at 1 a.m. and then
by probably 5 a.m. or something, they were so loud that we couldn't sleep, and then
we left and we drove, and then we almost died in a tornado.
Yes, so that may be why people don't do the research trips.
Yeah, because that was insane.
Yeah, well, we'll be headed back to the same part of the country there, so it's a different part of the country we're doing this time. We'll be back down towards the southeast again. We'll see if the same stuff happens down there.
Yikes. So. That's cool. It's good. This is great. One day we'll write a book on all this that happens, but and you couldn't wake me up, which just shows how exhausted I probably was, right?
Yes. The driving probably doesn't really exhaust you. Yeah.
Well, I was like delusional. You were shaking me. I'm like, when I finally woke up, I was like, what is going on? I mean, the alarm's going off. You're shaking me. I'm like, what is this? You know? Mm-hmm. Insane. Anyways, I hope people like a little bit more behind the scenes. It's fun. It is fun. So I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in with Geoff and myself. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, both on YouTube and the podcast side things. The support means everything to us. And we will see you in the next podcast. Take care.